Information discussed in this podcast may be sensitive in nature to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Joyce Dyer was known as a chatty, outgoing, and friendly woman in 2014. At age 54, she was enjoying life in the Tacoma, Washington area. Her children were now adults, but Joyce would still call them and talk to them all the time. Joyce had several friends she would stay in touch with regularly, too. In April of 2014, Joyce was just recovering from a surgery. She was renting a room at a house which is located on the south side of Tacoma. On April 4th, a friend of Joyce's came over to her house. Joyce's roommate was introduced to this man as David Lee. He wouldn't stay long at the house, however, and he and Joyce would soon leave together. She didn't take anything with her. And Joyce Dyer hasn't been seen or heard from since. Where is Joyce Michelle Dyer?
She's very outgoing. She has an outgoing spirit about herself. She's very friendly.
She's the type of person would call you nonstop and leave you the voicemails that wouldn't end.
Jeremy Dyer and his sister Melissa have spent the last year worrying about what happened to their mother. Joyce Dyer was renting a room on 40th Avenue East in unincorporated Pierce County when she disappeared. Jeremy remembers their final conversation.
She's like, oh, I'm tired. And I was like, okay. She's like, I love you. And I said, I love you. Bye. And I was like the last person of our family to ever speak to her.
Joyce had some health issues. She was still recovering from surgery, and she was doing well. Good or bad, though, she always stayed in touch with her family.
I was pretty concerned. I just had a really bad feeling in my stomach. This is not like my mom to not contact us.
At this point, we've reached dead ends everywhere. We've tried to look at what we can do to locate her. Pierce County detectives say Joyce left all of her personal items at home. They call her disappearance suspicious, and they're hoping the public can help find the man Joyce was last seen with.
He calls himself David Lee. He's Asian, and he may be an appliance repairman.
Investigators are hoping someone knows him.
So what we're trying to do is find out who he is and what they were doing together and what led up to her not being able to make it back home.
Until they do, Joyce's disappearance remains a mystery.
There just hasn't been a lot of answers and a lot of information. And so that's what we're searching for right now.
Hello, and welcome to a bonus episode of the Where Are They podcast. These bonus episodes are shorter, but they give us an opportunity to share cases with very little information, very little. But these people still deserve to have their stories told. They need to be found. Joyce Dyer was born on August 18th, 1959. Of course, we don't know much about her life growing up, and even anything really before 2014, but I do know that she had some addiction issues early on. But Joyce was clean and sober at the time of her disappearance, although I'm not sure how long it had been. She did have at least 2 children, Jeremy and Melissa, who you heard from in that little news clip interview from News Channel Fox 13 in Washington. Both Jeremy and Melissa described their mom as outgoing, friendly, chatty, and fun. It would be hard to imagine someone like Joyce having any kind of enemies. In April of 2014, Joyce was living in a house, renting a room. The house was located on the south side of Tacoma, specifically Frederickson Township. We'll dig into that area shortly. On April 4th, a friend of Joyce's came over to the house. This man was introduced to Joyce's roommate as David Lee, and then Joyce and David would leave the house together. From here, however, Joyce vanished into thin air. People noticed that she was missing fairly quickly as she talked to people all the time. And when friends and her children couldn't reach her, they of course became very worried. At her house, they noticed that she left all of her personal belongings behind. Nothing looked amiss or strange or out of place in any way. Searches for Joyce turned up nothing. No clues at all. The only thing authorities did have to go on was this man that she was last seen with. Was he still with her? Does he know something? Where did he last see her at? Or is he even a suspect in her disappearance? No one knows, but investigators do want to talk with him, as he might have been the last person to see Joyce. And it is important to note that the only information that we have on this man is coming from the roommate. And we don't know much at all about this roommate either. David was described as being Asian, and his name, at least the name that the roommate said they were given, was the name of David Lee. They said that he was about 5'7", maybe 160 pounds, and he might have been an appliance repairman. So law enforcement started spreading the word looking for this man, but they turned up nothing, which is strange. I know the Washington area, especially the bigger cities like Tacoma, are quite populated, but you think someone would recognize the description. A middle-aged Asian man named David Lee who works as an appliance repairman. Are there a lot of appliance repairmen that meet that description? Or was he maybe from out of the area? Of course, it's also possible that he used a fake name and or lied about what he did for work. So David Lee is named a person of interest, but his identity is actually unknown. Now in 2020, there would be an interesting case in Tacoma, Washington that had some people wondering if there might be a connection between this case and the disappearance of Joyce Dyer. A shout out to the Web Sleuths thread on Joyce's case, where I first learned about this possible connection. And it seems others have talked about this as well. In 2020, a man named David Lee Glenn was arrested and charged with assault. The charges would escalate to murder when the person he attacked ended up succumbing to their injuries. David Lee Glenn on April 5th, 2020, threw a piece of asphalt at someone and then continued to kick them and shove them. Interesting coincidence that this happened 6 years and 1 day from the date of Joyce's disappearance. Glenn's attorney said that his client suffers from a mental disorder and he had felt remorse for what he had done. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder with psychotic features, stimulant use disorder, and cannabis use disorder. But he was found competent to stand trial, and he would eventually take a plea deal, pleading guilty to second-degree murder. David Lee Glenn was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Now, there's nothing to state that this David Lee Glenn is connected to our mysterious David Lee. Law enforcement has never confirmed anything or said anything about this case being related. It could simply be a situation of a similar name. Now let's take a look at the area of South Tacoma and Frederickson. The city's population is around 220,000. Frederickson, Washington, is located on the south side of the city. Frederickson has a population of around 25,000 residents. Joyce was last seen leaving her home in Frederickson, specifically on 40th Avenue East. This street is completely residential by looking at Google Maps. There is what looks to be thicker woods on one side of the street with at least a 6-foot privacy fence going around it. One of the big questions I have about her leaving this house is, how did she leave? Did Joyce and Miss David leave on foot, or did they get in a car? I think if they had been walking, more people might have come forward with sightings of them. Certainly more people would have seen them. There are some patches of woods around the town and some rural areas, some farms actually not too far away from Frederickson. But nothing really stands out in the area. And not knowing if she had left in a car makes it really difficult to know which areas to kind of zero in on. Did Joyce leave on her own? Did she maybe meet with foul play? Or perhaps she had an accident? No one in her family or anyone that knew Joyce believes that she would have left on her own. That would have been completely uncharacteristic of her, and that isn't a theory that anyone really believes. Even law enforcement has stated they believe that foul play is a very possible theory. Joyce Dyer is described as a Caucasian woman, about 5'2" tall, and weighing around 150 pounds when she was last seen on April 4th, 2014. She was 54 years old and would today be 63. She has brown hair and blue eyes and usually wears prescription eyeglasses, although she doesn't always seem to be wearing them in the photos that I've seen. Joyce also recently had surgery, and her family says that she has surgical scars on her back and on the back part of her left leg. David Lee is described as an Asian man, about 5'7" tall and weighing around 160 pounds. The only other detail we have on David is that he might have worked as an appliance repairman. And remember, we only have these details because the roommate told authorities. Anyone with any information on the whereabouts of Joyce Dyer and or David Lee, or any information at all on this case, is asked to contact the Pierce County Sheriff's Office at 253-798-7794, or you can call Crime Stoppers, where you can remain anonymous, at 1-800-222-TIPS. If you are in the greater Washington state area, I will try and find or put together missing person flyer or poster for Joyce Dyer to share on social media. Joyce has been missing for 8 years now, way too long for her children to go without having any answers on what happened to their mother. Thank you all for listening to Joyce's story today. We will be back again very soon with another Unsolved Missing Persons episode. And until then, stay safe and hug your loved ones.